in January, and it was President's people asking me to be the chair of the DNC. So definitely a testament that when one door closes, others open, and you just got to be ready to walk through it when it does.
Yeah, thank you. It's an amazing call you received, I'm sure. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story with us. I think everyone appreciates it. I do want to ask, I mean, you have this massive responsibility. What do you think is the number one thing that Democrats need to be doing to get Black voters to the polls in 2024?
You know, everybody in this country, and I think particularly Black folks, nobody wants to ever feel as though they're being taken for granted. Everyone wants to be seen, everyone wants to be heard, everyone wants to be valued. And it's something that I learned very early on in life. And this is the great equalizer in this country, guys, is that my one vote, your one vote, carries the same value and weight as that of Bill Gates or Donald Trump or anybody else. It is the great equalizer. And the question is, will we utilize it in order to improve our status in life and the status of the folks that we love and we care about? And I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't need to vote and this and that. You have to think about this, folks. Everything that impacts your life in terms of your quality of life is determined by some elected official. And either you give the authority to pick that person to somebody else, or you take that authority for yourself. And that's why the right to vote is so important. You know, people always say, well, Jaime, this and that, and like, you're not voting for me. I'm gonna be all right. 47 years, I'm gonna be all right. You're voting for yourself. You're voting for the loved ones that you have. You know, my grandfather passed away with complications with diabetes. And I think about what Joe Biden has just done. He used to take insulin. And I remember the cost of insulin. I remember how sometimes he had to struggle in order to get his insulin because it was so expensive. So sometimes that meant delaying paying their rent, or it meant delaying paying the light bill, or doing this and that. So when he's voting, when he went to vote, and it's something that he and I used to do religiously together, he was going in that booth to vote on somebody who's going to make the quality of his quality of life better. And I was voting on making sure that whoever we sent to Washington or we sent to the State House was going to make his quality of life better. Because I felt I was good as a young 20-some-year-old guy. I felt like, nothing could hurt me. But the people that I loved, the people that I would lay my life down for, were suffering. And they were hurt. And so, folks, one of the things that we have to understand is that your vote isn't, you have to think about the power that it has to transform your life and the life of other folks. We now have a president who just passed signed legislation that is capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month. That's huge. It's a game changer for so many people. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so I think the thing that we all should take away from this is this. We have a lot of power. And the question is, are we going to use it? Or are we going to complain about it? Or are we going to use it to pick people who can transform and do things for us and our communities and the people that we care about and love? And that's the joy that I get in doing this work, is because I do get to see, like, the issue, the problem, and then getting that right leader who can step up at that right moment to address that issue, to address that problem, and thereby improve the lives of the folks down.
Thank you so much. And I want to ask specifically about Black male voters.
Yeah.
I think we're hearing a lot that Black male voters are starting to move to the Republican Party. We obviously haven't seen it in large numbers yet. But is that something that you were concerned about? And if so, what do you plan to do, and what do you think Democrats need to do more broadly?
Well, and we've all heard this, and it's not hyperbole, but the Black community in general is the heart, the soul, the backbone of the Democratic Party. When you look at, there is no more loyal constituency to the Democratic Party than Black women first and Black men second. Not even a debate. But again, going back to what I originally said, everyone wants to feel as though that they're never taken for granted, and that they're seen, that they're heard, and they're valued. And I think right now that black men, and I've been going around the country, and Antoine Seawright, I saw him in here earlier in the back. Antoine is my senior advisor behind the board as well. We've been going around the country having conversations with black men, barbershops, and various groups. And a lot of folks just feel as though that the things that they care about aren't being talked about. And they feel as though that they're being secondary and pushed to the side. And it's important that we address those issues. The messages that resonate with black women don't always are the same messages that resonate with black men. And so one of the things that is really important for us to understand as a party is that we have to speak to the people where they are, and we have to speak to them, and we have to speak to their hopes and their fears and their aspirations. And I think for black men, as a black man who's raising 2 black boys in South Carolina, security, safety, a bright future, how to take care and protect my family, but how to take care and protect my loved ones. All of those things are really important. Mobility, to make sure that my family doesn't struggle like my grandparents struggled, or how I struggled when I was growing up. And so that means that the Democratic Party has to make sure that in its messaging, that it's addressing that fear, it's addressing that frustration, and we're speaking specifically to the individuals about that and how we have a plan to address those things. I don't think you would see black men go to the Republican Party because the policy initiatives are in alignment. Because it's not. And Donald Trump didn't do anything that I see, and this is not me being overly partisan, that help the brothers that I know who I grew up with in Orangeburg, South Carolina. We have seen that, hell, he doesn't give a damn about those things. But what I think they are attracted to is the fact that you have somebody who has the strength to stand up and speak forcefully about what they believe in, even if they don't agree with what that person believes in, right? So the Democratic Party has to be as forceful to stand up and speak for the things that we believe in, so that folks see that they know that we are actually going to roll up our sleeves and fight for you. Just like you go to the polls and faithfully vote and support, we have to make sure that we are going, when we're negotiating policy, that we're not going to negotiate on the backs of black men and black women. That we're actually going to stand up for them like they stand up for us. And so that's the thing that I'm really, really focusing a lot of. One of my top priorities as chair as we go into this election cycle is making sure that we're going into communities, that we're listening first, that we're taking what we learned from those conversations, and we're bringing them back to the White House. We're bringing them back to policymakers, to our governors, to our senators, to our members on the Hill, and asking them to make sure that they're also crafting legislation to address those things. And so that's really a lot of folks, and we're not waiting until next year to do that. I started doing that. I mean, we're doing it during the midterms, and we haven't stopped. We're going to continuously move forward on that. And we have to prove ourselves that we really do believe what we say. I often tell folks, it's not about telling you, but it's about showing. Actions speak a whole lot more than words. And so, I think the president, and I would love to talk a little bit about how this president and Democrats have worked hard to demonstrate their support. Now, it's not to say that we've been able to do everything that we want to do. There's been a lot of blockage in terms of that as well. But even when there's been blockage, we found some ways to get around some of that stuff. And so, love to chat a little bit about that too.
Yeah. No, thank you. I think we're out of time. Oh, we got some more time. Okay, great.
Well, can I run the tape?
Then I would love for you to run the tape, please.
Because you often get, and I get all the time as chair, What has this administration done for black folks? Well, and I haven't run the tape. I mean, just think about where we were 2020, right? We had a president in the White House who every day preached hatred and fear and division. And 80 million of us stood up and doubled down on it. 80 million. And this president and vice president didn't just say, well, we appreciate your support, and now we're going to sit on our hands and not do anything. They started doing stuff. The American Rescue Plan, because you remember the first round of PPP loans during COVID, there were, you know who got, David and I are Lakers fans. The LA Lakers got a PPP loan. But there were barbershops and beauticians and funeral homes and so many black businesses that could not get a PPP loan. One, the banks wouldn't even give them to them. And so this president and vice president said, well, we're going to change that. Many of the PPP loans in the American Rescue Plan went to black and brown businesses to make sure that they could stay open, making sure that we had vaccines available, cutting childhood poverty in half. I wish we would have continued the effort on in terms of the child tax credit because it had a huge benefit. Cut childhood poverty by half in a way. We saw that debt, capital debt for HBCUs was wiped out in its entirety. Some of these colleges have been carrying that debt for decades, wiped out in its entirety. Over $7 billion with a B going to our historically black colleges and universities. Making sure that we kept the pensions alive for many of our folks. Making sure that we worked and did something for black farmers. Now, the Republicans went and sued us in the courts, but this president went, one of his first initiatives to work to make sure that there was some equity for black farmers. We look at the infrastructure bill, making sure there's equity in terms of infrastructure in our communities, getting rid of the lead pipes that we've been drinking out of for decades, making sure that took place, making sure that we brought broadband into communities that we all live in. How in the world do we expect our kids to compete with the rest of the world when they can't even connect with the rest of the world? This is what this president and vice president did. We put more black women on the appellate courts than all presidents combined. Over a third of the judges that Joe Biden has appointed, we only make up 13% of the population. Over a third of the judges, federal lifetime appointments that Joe Biden has put on have been black. Huge, in first black woman on the United States Supreme Court. They called her everything but a child of God, and guess what they're calling her now? Madam Justice, right? So folks, I mean, we look at the criminal justice reform. They stood in the way, Tim Scott and the others stood in the way of the George Floyd bill getting passed, but this president said, well, I'm going to do what I can do within my federal executive power. I'm going to get rid of the federal chokeholds. He moved on marijuana. He moved on student loans. I didn't even think that he was going to touch the Pell Grants, but this president did, and most of us. Yeah, there were some people who had to Google what a Pell Grant was, but I bet everybody in this room knows what Pell Grant is. But for Pell Grants, I would not have gotten my degree. And so that's what this president has moved on. Even when they stand in the way, he tries to find ways in order to improve the quality of life of all folks. And the last thing I said, I know our time, guys, is I don't know.
We are.
But let me say this.
What is the plan for living wage reparations?
Well, let me address this one first. 47 years I've been alive. 47 years. In those 47 years, Iowa and New Hampshire have always started a political process for choosing the most powerful person on the face of this world. And in those 47 years, we've had Democratic presidents, we've had Republican presidents, and nobody has ever touched Iowa and New Hampshire until this president. And this president said the backbone of the Democratic Party, which is Africa, instead of being at the back of the table in terms of deciding who's the most powerful, instead of us talking about ethanol and corn subsidies in presidential discussion. Now let's talk about black returnable rates. Let's talk about the issues that the black community is struggling with. The state where 40% of enslaved people came into this country through the Port of Charleston, where almost 90% of African Americans can find one descendant from South Carolina, is now the first state to decide the most powerful person on the face of not this country, of this planet in South Carolina. And that one president who had the gumption and the notion to do that was Joe Biden. Nobody has ever done that before. Giving black folks an opportunity to determine the most powerful person on the face of the planet. And so I know a lot of folks talk about this and that, but folks, that's real and that's substantive. And so are we perfect? No, we're not. None of us are. But are we trying in order to live up to the words of the founders that all people are created equal? We're trying our best to do that each and every day. Do we still got a long way to go? Yes. We still got a long way to go to make sure that those words actually mean something, that they're real. But just know, the actions are showing that we're trying to move in the right direction. And it's going to take a little more time. It's going to take more votes in the House and the Senate. We got to get over the filibuster because you ain't going to get nothing done. One of the things I want to teach people is civics in this country. Until the filibuster is gone, you won't get anything through the United States Senate if you don't have 60 votes. And we got to take the House back in the near term. So we still got a long way to go, but this president is fighting to try to improve things day by day.
Thank you. Sorry, we're not taking questions. I believe you have an engagement immediately after this.
If you have a question, a Q&A period, just to catapult on what the sister had to say, the DNC is asking us for votes. Yeah, you did not adequately address lineage-based reparations, but it's not just about lineage-based reparations. We have other problems. You're asking us for our vote. We need an anti-black crime bill. We have just witnessed in Jacksonville a white supremacist shoot down 3 people for the sake just simply because they were black. Subsequent to that, there was another thwarted attempt at a church, right, that was thankfully thwarted, where they wanted to kill black people in a church. This is literally our life in our world. Within the past 30 days, then up in the Cape, up in Massachusetts, we got young white supremacists sitting up there trying to drown a teenage black boy in a pump and yelling George Floyd. So we have a real problem. The DNC needs to give us an anti-black criminal bill. It's extremely serious. Let's reel it back. Let's take it back to Buffalo.
Listen. Just as much as passion as you have, one of my best friends in politics, convincing Pitney was run down by Mother Manuel in Charleston. So I know firsthand of the passion on that.
Lineage-based reparations, and we need to do something about anti-black crime. You are the DNC. You have the power of the DNC. We don't see it. Joe Biden said that he had our back, but what we're seeing is that he stabbed us in the back.
Well, ma'am, respectfully disagree with you too. Thank you. Respectfully disagree.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Look at what's going down in the national media. We're getting killed.
Well, and listen, ma'am, I know that.
The case 2 weeks ago.
I know that.
You want to drown a teenager in a white supremacist, a young one too. They're being breeded. You want to get them drowned for drown?
Well,
Everybody's trying to act like anti-blackness doesn't exist.
I appreciate all of that. I appreciate all that, and I can tell you, we fight each and every day to try to improve.
Known as freedmen and the Negro. When is the DNC going to do something about
Okay,
it?
thank you for sharing your opinion. I want to give the chairperson the space to say anything you want to, but also your.
No, well, listen, this is the thing and I understand every single day. I understand. Antoine and I remember the night that the Mother Emanuel disaster happened. Because it was Antoine, see right in the back, who called me and told me, Jamie, did you hear what happened at Clem's church? I said, no. I said, is Clem okay? For me, Clemente Pinckney was one of my mentors, one of my idols. Someone who I looked up to. Because he was that young brother who was the star of my generation, who actually broke into politics first. Man who had a voice as beautiful as an angel. And I got that call. And that night I cried like a baby. And I cried like a baby for weeks on end. Because my dear friend, who was not only a public servant, but he was a man of God who only wanted to make sure that he did the best for every single person, was now gone because of hate. Because people hated him, not because of who he was, but because of the color he was. So I understand firsthand. I have felt the pain and still feel it. Still have tears. So I can tell you that there are folks, and I'm frustrated. I get frustrated when we can't move things as quickly as we can. I wish like hell we had 60 votes to move the George Floyd bill in the Senate. But there's no magic wand that you can just wave at the DNC that we have at the DNC to wave to get policy done in this country. Because if it was, it would be done. I don't do this for my own personal benefit. If I wanted to do something for my own personal benefit, hell, I go to Wall Street and make a ton of money. But I do it because I'm raising 2 black boys in South Carolina where they have a man whose statue is standing there on the grounds, who said that when black folks were allowed to do certain things, that they were monkeys, deserved to be eliminated. And there's a statue that is still on the State House grounds. So I understand your passion, sister. I feel it too, but I also understand your frustration, probably more so than you do. Because I'm the second black man as chair of the DNC. In the 175 history of the Democratic Party, 175 years that the DNC has been around. Only the second black man, third black person after Ron Brown, Donna Brazile, and myself. And I wish that I could just change things off. I wish we had the power to do that, but we don't. Until we change the 60 votes, until we make sure that we have the House and the Senate, people with a population of 2 in some of these states can hold up legislation that would impact and improve the quality of lives of millions of folks. And it's frustrating. As a black man, it's extremely frustrating. As a black man that's been in the room to hear the policy discussions, it is extremely frustrating. But guess what? My grandparents raised me to be somebody that doesn't give up. And that even when they throw a roadblock in front of me, even when they make it hard for us to do it, we try to find a way to inch back. And it may not be the miles that we want. It may be 10 inches, it may be a foot, but it's a better thing than what it was yesterday. So I get it. I totally get it. And I appreciate you and your passion and your energy is part of how you push on us. But let's make sure that we don't beat up on just the people on our side, but we beat up on the folks who are standing in the door, who are the ones who are keeping it from happening. Tim Scott stood in the door of the George Floyd bill. Kept it from happening. So what I need the help on is, if we can get the 60 votes, if we can get rid of the filibuster, we can move heaven and earth to improve the quality of the lives of all the folks, particularly black folks who deserve it. But until then, folks, just like Santa Claus, we got to make it real. And the only way it makes it real is if we get the votes in order to get it done. So I appreciate it. I feel the frustration. I live the frustration every single day. But I still get up every day hopeful. South Carolina, we got a motto. It's one that I live by. It says, while I breathe, I hope. Now, y'all know, for those of you in church, you know faith without works is dead. And I know in my life, hope without action is never realized. The only way that I know to make this stuff real, the only way that I know to improve this, and it ain't something that you just do one election, is through our vote. That's That's the only way that I see it. So my motto isn't while I breathe I hope, but while I breathe I vote, because that's how I make hope real for people. That's how I change things. And if we sit on our hands and think that it's going to happen magically, all of a sudden people are going to have good conscience all of a sudden, that shit's a pipe dream. It ain't going to happen that way. And I've told this to young people, and this is the last thing I tell young people. Young people are the largest voting demographic in this country. The largest voting demographic in this country, but the lowest performing demographic in this country. If you want to change the country, then you got the power to do it, but you got to use it. Because the people of ill will use it. They waited 50 years to get rid of Roe. 50 years. They were patient. They got plenty of setbacks, but guess what? They got rid of it. We got to be just as vigilant. We got to be just as harsh. We got to work just as hard to make sure that the things that we want in life, the things that we deserve in life, that we actually can get it. But if we sit back and say it doesn't matter, then guess what? You are handing all of that over to them. That's why I sacrificed my life to run for the United States Senate in goddamn South Carolina. In South Carolina. I can tell you the stories of how hard it was for my family. The shit they were doing to me in my hometown, trying to dig up about my family. Why would I sacrifice that? But for wanting to improve the quality of life of the people that I care about. So I get it. I totally get it. But don't think that just because you have a fancy title and I have this thing, that I'm sitting on my hands, or anybody else is sitting on their hands not trying to make things better for everybody else. We need forces on the outside and the inside in order to make the progress. But don't beat up on your allies when you got folks on the other side who are standing in the door. And that's all I'm saying. We want the same thing. We may come at it a different way, but we want the same thing. The last thing I said is what Jim Clark said to me. We may take different paths in life, but hopefully the destination is the same. We can get to Columbia, South Carolina, and there are a lot of different routes. But let's get to Columbia, South Carolina. Thank you all. I have to go because I'm always late, but I appreciate all of you so much for what you do. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.